Chapter 15 of The Road from Orion. Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. When I opened my eyes in the dim torch light, I saw Quixote dusting off some type of carved drawing on the underground wall with his hands. Rosinante was nearby, pawing the ground in a bullish manner. On closer inspection, I could see Egyptian hieroglyphs decorated the walls along their conventional artwork. The head of the character always drawn in profile, while the body is seen from the front. Although the face is to the side, the eye is drawn in full. The legs are turned to the same side as the face with the 1 foot placed in front of each other. The stance of the body is severe, but the face calm and serene. Is almost always tilted slightly towards the sky, as if the figure were basking in the warm sun. The Egyptians used this two-dimensional frontalism style for thousands of years. Looking around the pyramid, I saw columns of hieroglyphs cut into the rock walls. This hieroglyphic language is primarily connected with the Eye of Horus, said Quixote, pointing to a single frame by a curved brow with falcon markings beneath it. The Egyptians used the eye as a funerary amulet for the protection against evil and rebirth in the underworld, and they decorated mummies, coffins, and tombs with it. The eye served to ensure safety, protect health, and give the wearer wisdom and prosperity. It was called the all-seeing eye. Other attributes associated with it were terror and wrath. Moving my fingers over the smooth carving, I traced a long spiral out of the pupil to its center. A trivia flooded my mind in a series of numbers. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55. They stretch to infinity. I recognize the numbers as Fibonacci Spiral, a series related to the golden ratio 1.618 or pi. Any number in the series after 1 is equal to the sum of the two preceding numbers. Adjacent numbers approximate pi 13 divided by 8 equals 1.625. 55 divided by 34 equals 1.617. In a triangle, pi forms the dimensions of the pyramids, and the ratio is everywhere in the universe, in plants, animals, the solar system, music, population growth, and the proportions of the human body. The Fibonacci series converges on pi. DNA, for instance, measures 34 angstroms long by 21 angstroms wide for each full cycle of its double helix spiral. The eye has a personality of its own, swooping down out of the sky to right wrongs, said Quixote. Continuing, he said, the eye has several meanings, all specific. It can be dissected into 6 parts, each with a numerical value that represents one of the 6 senses. For example, touch is represented by the value 1/64th, or 5 rho. The symbol for rho is the mouth. I watched Quixote pull out his sword and hastily draw the partition, the eye of the dirt floor, to reveal the 6 lines equaling the senses. In the Egyptian system, he said there is the unit of the row, and 320 row equals I hakat. Taste equals 132 hakat, or 10 row. Hearing equals 1/16 hakat, or 20 row. Thoughts equal 1/8 hakat, or 40 row. Sight equals 1/4 hakat, or 80 row. And smell equals 1/2 hakat, or 160 row. Quote explained that the fractions also suggest the process of DNA replicating into two daughter cells, each having 1/2 of the original sense DNA strand, then four cells a quarter, with a quarter, eight cells with a eighth, and so on. In addition, the mathematical series also represents the radioactive decay series. According to Quote, the Eye of Horus was torn into fragments by the conspiracy of Seth, while Horus overcame his rival with the help of Thoth, who made the eye whole again to restore Osiris. He continued, now what's even more interesting is the word Wsa for Osiris, or Wasa, which appears hundreds of times in the pyramid text. In these pyramid texts, it means the place of creation or the seat of the eye. The activity of the eye relates to the activity of a single cell that brings the god Osiris back to life. Quote told me that the activity of the cell or eye is transcription and replication of DNA, and then translation to protein, what modern chemists call the central dogma of gene expression, DNA to RNA to protein. He then said that the Eye of Horus was not human DNA, nor was Osiris made from human DNA. I was stuck on the idea that Osiris represented the DNA of a god when I realized I was caught up in the symbol again, and that Osiris represented something in a spiritual world, something in the world beyond, as did the Eye of Horus. Then a lightning bolt of thought struck me. The spiritual world, or world beyond, was the cellular world, the microscopic world we could not see. This took away the god status of Osiris, who I thought of as a molecular DNA other than human. The idea that the world beyond the spiritual world was the quantum arena of microscopic particles made me see the science within the religious symbol. Quote, who read my thoughts, was smiling. Psyche, he said, you're beginning to understand the meaning of symbols. So these storytelling hieroglyphs you see on the wall are not related to the Egyptian religion. They are related to tiny particle world and describe a religion of science and genetics. The ancient Egyptians masked their scientific knowledge in religious symbols. Questions ran my mind, but I only blurted out one. If Osiris represents a type of DNA other than human, what is it? It is, he said, the DNA of a solar viral life form. My astonished eyes widened. For a brief moment, I thought he was joking, but he was not. Lucia's explanation about the sun representing a virus engulfing the earth thrashed through my mind. I knew that all the Egyptian creator gods, Atum, Khepera, Ra, Osiris, were solar gods. Was Quote suggesting that the sun represented a viral life form as Lucia had? Thoughts slammed through my mind. A virus has no plasma membrane, cytoplasm, a ribosome, or ribosome. They cannot carry out transcription or translation or make ATP by themselves. They do not grow. They are ugly parasites that take over the replication machinery of a cell to clone their own kind. They are not even cells. They kill cells. Scientists say they are not alive. I tried to calm down, focusing on the watchful Quote, who was obviously enjoying my mental distress. His lips framed a large smile that exposed his bloody gums. He said nothing, for I knew he was reading my thoughts, so I tried to think rationally, or better yet, imaginatively, looking at the positive side of the virus concept. Viruses transfer, shuffle, and redistribute genes between organisms, but they also cause diseases in plants and animals like AIDS, smallpox, and cancer. As molecular syringes, they infect all types of cells: bacteria, fungi, plant, animal, and human. Sometimes they cross over from one species to another. Lucia has said that what is above is below. The ions on the magnetic field lines of the sun and the earth represent the nucleosomes of on a DNA molecule. Was the sun injecting its DNA through the earth's magnetosphere? Did the sun god Ra represent a viral life form that was crossing over? Were the ancient Egyptians advocating a transformation that will clone a viral human in the afterlife, after death? Quixote could see I was suffering. Even the insolent nag Rosinante stared at me, whining as if the animal sympathized with my manic state. Help me, I pleaded to the valorous knight, and then he told me the whole god awful story about how the sun god Ra joins up with the deceased to ferry him by boat through the black hell of the Duat. There they meet the god man Osiris, who rises from the dead to allow the birth of the harsh child, a creation the deceased sun god becomes. The entire journey revolves around cutting off the heads of enemies, throwing them in pits of fire, desperate wailing, and everything else you would expect from a hell. I was beginning to understand why Quixote acted as he did and what motivated Conrad's head-hunting hero Kurtz. Still, after being mentored by Quixote, I was smart enough to know that this story needed to be translated. The symbols needed to be explained, for we were not talking about real people in hell. We were talking about molecules, chemical reactions, and the idea that after death, a human being could transform or be cloned into some other life form, possibly the Overman, an idea that now left me unsettled and troubled. Quixote then began to explain about the Sphinx. He said that the great Sphinx is sometimes called Haru on the horizon. Between the paws of its lion body rests a representation of a human. Looking directly at Quixote, I said, the Sphinx then is a symbol pointing to the nature of the Sphinx, which has a human face and the body of the lion. Quixote smiled. Yes and no, he said. The Sphinx is a symbol that points to a fabulous animal or creation that has the nature of a human. It suggests abnormality, deformity, and supernatural power while representing the new species the deceased becomes, rather, if he follows the advice of the funerary text. The Sphinx is called Horus because it is the child of Osiris, a child that is both human and viral. I was speechless, lost in thought that the child horse was a vile human, falling prey to the error of thinking that the human form was evolutionary perfection. We were no longer talking about the god man Osiris. We were talking about Osiris the virus and his vile human progeny, a new afterlife species on the petri dish of death. Shakespeare's deformed prisoner hobbled into my head, but I shut him out. Seeing my discomfort, Quixote callously explained that the Egyptian scientists discovered that after death, the genetic essence of a human could be inserted into a bacterial phage and then transferred by this special type of virus into a host cell. A bacterial phage, or phage as he called it, also acts as a miniature courier ferrying DNA fragments between species, but this special phage only infects bacteria. It takes over the whole cell's reproductive machinery, replicating its phage DNA along with that of the insert. Putting all this information together, I reasoned that the sun god Ra represented the phage that was carrying the inserted human genes of the deceased. The duat represented the whole cell and the sun god Ra, and the deceased parasitized by taking over its replication machinery. And the horror and the horror child, I mean Horus child, represented the birth of the new viral human creation composed of the DNA of the viral sun god and the genes of the human insert. Pausing, I tried to see the whole Egyptian afterlife experiment clearly without emotion, but I was confused, frightened. I understood that Osiris too was the same type of virus as the sun god, but I did not understand how Osiris the virus could rise from the dead. My thinking was clouded on the issue. Quohote saw my confusion and continued, "What does a lion signify to you?" I thought about it seriously. Although the lion suggests royalty, it also suggests savagery, and the idea of being attacked and devoured. I would say there is a savage beauty and fighting spirit about the lion, but that is that it is ultimately wild and uncontrollable, possibly representing nature's uncontrollable creations. There lies the point, he said. Nature's creations are uncontrollable, especially during viral replication. Remember the furious fighting spirit of the thousands of Greek warriors that swarmed from within the wooden horse, the machine that overcame the Trojans. This wild and uncontrollable explosion of life suggests the raging productive power of nature. Quohote then explained that the sun god and Osiris acted like phage lambda, a temperate virus that could live two different lifestyles, lysis and lysogeny. When lambda chooses lysogeny, it infects the whole cell and becomes dormant. Its DNA genome lodged in the whole cell's chromosome, nailed there, so to speak. This silent, inert lambda genome is the sleeping Osiris, he said. When the very first bacterial host cell multiplied, the sleeping Osiris multiplied with it, fragmenting into millions of cells for life on Earth. Soon the bacteria cells developed into the human eukaryote type. The lambda genome now replicated within each, but still sleeping in the DNA of all cell types. I gazed at Quohote blankly and said, "You mean the lambda genome sleeps quietly within human DNA until the person dies, then bursts into activity?" "Yes, my friend," said Quohote. "It is the heart of all matter." As relentlessly as Quohote slaughtered sheep, he delivered his lecture, slashing up religious beliefs I had accepted on faith. He would not stop. When lambda chooses lysis, the incoming infecting lambda takes over the whole cell's replication machinery, activating the sleeping dormant lambda, which rises from the dead to produce millions of lambda progeny. The lytic lifestyle is rapid, vegetative replication called rolling circle replication because it replicates in a circle, unscrolling like a scroll, like a roll of toilet paper, like a witch's hoop. The vile progeny then escapes from the whole cell like thousands of little soldiers from a Trojan horse. His words, like a sharp sword into my heart, made me see the great hammers of water-powered fulling mills, pounding wool fiber into felt, were indicators of the grindstone of rolling circle replication, or were indicators of the grindstone of rolling circle replication. It was the same idea of mechanical operation circling around and round, grinding, crushing, pulverizing to produce a product. Fear struck my mind, milled around as fast as the herd of sheep Quixote attacked. He continued delivering the hammer blow that cut off my head. When the deceased meets up with the sun god, he becomes part of the lambda DNA that helps bring Osiris back from the dead. Like a thief on the dawn, Quixote robbed me of my senses. Reeling with questions, I had time for one humble response as the blood thinned in my brain. I stammered, how does one recognize the sun god in the afterlife? Smiling again with his raw, bloody gums, Quixote said, imagine yourself immersed in measures of glittering light and wearing a gold crown of triangular mirrors upon your head. When you see this pure heart of light, this nameless reality, go to it even when you feel the emotion of repulsion and disgust. Weary and faint, I could take no more. Mercifully, his words faded, becoming far away, while other words invaded my mind. Domin duis, Agnus Dei, Phyllis Patris, Quit Tollis, Peccata Mundi, Miss Seria Nobis. The light of Quixote's knowledge was illuminating the quagmire of my brainwashed mind, exposing the misinterpretations and lies of history. My mind, stripped of cultural garbage, was numb, my eyes weary from exhaustion. I only wanted sleep and the chivalrous night to leave. The last sound I heard was Rosinante snickering and stomping its hooves as if the horse was mounted. Then I passed out. All right, we at the end of chapter 15. Thank y'all for being with me. We'll be back with chapter 16 next time you hear from me. Peace. Shalom.